Well, ladies and gentlemen, the cycle is now complete, capping off what has been the weirdest generation of gaming that I've ever seen. Sony has now joined Microsoft and Nintendo in raising the prices of their systems, that being the PlayStation 5, almost 5 years now into the generation. If you bought a PS5 when it first came out, it is technically now worth more than it was back in 2020. Hey, our parents bought Amazon. We bought game consoles at launch. That's the real winner. But we are just in a very, very weird time right now. And I wanted to take a look at some of the pricing that we have to deal with now with Sony, talk a bit about where we're heading with next generation, because that is a big question now when it comes to, say, the PlayStation 6, and exactly what's going on right now and kind of what people are throwing around as to some of the reasoning. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. So let's head over here. This is on PlayStation Blog. They say new prices effective starting on August 21st. No, they didn't want to give you a huge heads up. If you were planning to get a PS5, they're thinking, well, if we tell them about it a day before, they might not have time to go out and get it at the current price. They'll have to deal with the updated, increased price. Anyway, they go on to say, similar to many global businesses, we continue to navigate a challenging economic environment. They use roundabout, very vague phrases. That's common, though, with all these companies. Microsoft, Nintendo, they do the same thing. Uncertain economic conditions, etc. They don't necessarily want to hone in on exactly what the issue is here. They're just saying, hey, challenging economic environment. They say, as a result, we've made the difficult decision to increase the recommended retail price for PlayStation 5 consoles in the US starting on August 21st. Here's the updated list in the US. The PlayStation 5, that's the one with the disc drive, $550. So it's going up $50. The PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, $500, also going up $50. And the PlayStation 5 Pro, $750, same deal, $50 increase. Yeah, it makes the most expensive console we've seen get just more expensive. Also keep in mind, if you want the disc drive, maybe to play your PlayStation 4 games that you have physically or PS5 games, yeah, you're going to tack another $80 onto that for the disc drive. You're at $830. Yes, that's where we are right now with game systems. The one, though, that I think I'm most impressed about right now, it's the digital edition. And I know if you look at the list, it's the cheapest one. You're like, oh, why is that? Well, the PS5 digital, less than 5 years ago, released in 2020, November, at $400. It's gone up in price twice in the US. It started at $400, went to $450 with that revision. And I mean, technically, if you want a disc drive as well, tack another $80 onto that. But then it went now to $450, from $450 to $500. That thing has gone up 25% in less than 5 years now. I mean, that's crazy to see that. I know if you look outside of gaming, things have just gotten really expensive, like across the board. It's wild stuff out there right now, with inflation being a big thing that's been pointed out for years now. And tariffs being the other thing you're going to hear a lot of people discuss. And Sony going up $50 isn't quite as much as Microsoft went up. Remember, they went up $100. Like, ripped the Band-Aid off. They talked about $80 games, the whole thing, which they then backtracked on for at least for Outer Worlds 2 and then their holiday titles. We'll see what happens next year. But here, Sony went up $50. And that's something people are bringing up. Like, oh, they didn't go up as much as Microsoft. Well, I mean, in their mind, they're still cheaper than the Xbox. So when the holidays roll around, which they're still going to sell PS5 systems, and it might just even come down to, I want a high-end box, the quote-unquote high-end box, that does 4K. I know PlayStation, they're a strong brand. I'll go with them because they are, $50 cheaper, say, than the Xbox Series X. So I think that's kind of Sony's thought process here, is we don't want to keep eating cost of, say, tariffs and inflation, but we also don't want to push as far as, let's just go to $600 and $550. They're sitting somewhere in the middle. Now, I will say this: there's still a chance that Sony could do another round of price increases, depending on how things continue for them, because they do point out the recommended retail prices for PlayStation 5 accessories remain unchanged, and we have no other price changes to announce for additional markets. I think that's where the additional quote-unquote price increase could come in, are from accessories. Sony has already tried to do things to kind of avoid this, and that's one of the reasons it's been a bit more prolonged than, say, Nintendo or Microsoft. Sony has done stuff like raise prices in other regions. They've played around with the subscription the subscription cost for PlayStation Plus. So they're doing things to try to necessarily avoid just outright raising price in the US, which is their strongest market. But here they are. And people are trying to figure out why is that? Well, inflation has been going on for years. That's been pointed out. And even Sony themselves, along with Microsoft, have mentioned it. No, this, according to analysts and everyone else, is coming down to tariffs. Now, Sony's also been pretty transparent about this, which is interesting. They told us with investors that they were expecting about a $680 impact, $680 million, $680, they'll take that, but $680 million impact from tariffs. And this is wide sweeping. So it would be through Japan, China, Malaysia, Vietnam. They do at least have their manufacturing and stuff kind of diversified compared to Microsoft, who, almost completely relies on China for Xbox manufacturing. That is a 30% tariff. So you kind of see maybe why Microsoft was like, nope, it's $100 more and that's it. Sony was kind of doing what Nintendo was doing, where they were offloading some of their manufacturing for PS5 to other regions to try to spread out where the tariffs would necessarily impact them. I think the one in China is doing some damage right now, and that's where a lot of that $680 million number is coming from. But the thing with this is people come back to, okay, you're affected by the tariffs, but why are you raising prices? And I feel like many people who have been around this channel understand that these corporations are here for the money. That's it. They're not doing this for fun. It's not like a cool little project for them. At the end of this whole thing, they're expecting profit. And when Sony reports $1 billion in operating profit, they want to continue that. They don't want to go backwards. So with that in mind, yeah, they're going to make their stuff more expensive if they have to. And they'll try to work other ways to try to find the money elsewhere. But it seems like here they got down to it and they said, nope, we're raising prices because we want more operating profit next quarter. So in the future, don't be surprised when these corporations do it. Just understand they are an entity, a business entity, and they exist to just make money. Now, people are wondering about the PlayStation 6 because we are staring at a $750 PlayStation 5 Pro. And that is... This is the thing where I'm curious how Sony will navigate this. And this will become more and more of a topic as we go along because we're about to be 5 years in. I think this is I want to say it's an 8-year cycle. It could end up being a 7-year, but when that PS6 starts getting talked about, that pricing is going to get interesting. And I'm back and forth on the idea of Sony doing something with the PS5 Pro to where I don't think they can discount it. They might have to discontinue that thing. And I kind of feel this is going to sound weird to people at first. I sort of just early predictions. I kind of think the PS6 is going to come in at $600. And the way I think they're going to do it, it's digital only at launch. So at that point would be $100 more than the PlayStation 5 digital now. And that with all the work Sony has been doing, if you've been keeping up with them, they are working to make it so if you get a digital system from them, like a PS5 digital, you have to just go through them to buy your games. You can't go to Walmart or Best Buy or go on Amazon and get a game digitally, like one of those cards that you then just punch the code in and you get it at the storefront level for the digital store. No, you can only buy currency cards. So with that in mind, they can subsidize the PS6 that way to where if they do have to take a loss on it, it won't matter because the majority of people, let's face it, aren't necessarily going to go out and buy a disc drive for it. They'll just deal with a digital library of games and buy them exclusively from Sony. But that's just some of my early prediction stuff around that. Again, I'm sure we'll be revisiting that topic quite often as we get into probably end of 2026 into 2027. I'd like to think 2028 is when we'll see the PlayStation 6, but who knows? at this point, because for the longest time, these price changes weren't necessary because these cycles would be 5 years, for a new console. And then it got a little bit longer with the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And now we're still talking about the PS4 still being around. So the PS5 could be a very long generation. All right. But because it was 5-year cycles for like the PS2 and the original Xbox was here for 4.5 years or something. It gave these console manufacturers, these platform holders, a chance to kind of reset their pricing based on challenging economic environments. Not the case anymore. Things have accelerated rapidly when it comes to the economic environment, and we're seeing these moves in real time, and it is a very, very strange console generation now, and I think it's just going to get weirder as we go along, especially as we get into next generation. But there was one thing I mentioned with Nintendo, and that's if they just stand around at $450, just based on the way that the market is going, they'll end up just being the cheapest console just by standing still at $450. And it looks like that looks to be the case. So I'll be curious to see how these console manufacturers, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, continue to adapt as we go along, and just how much money they're looking to pass along to the consumers in the future. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Yes, the PlayStation 5 going up in price almost 5 years after it came out. The days of the cheap PlayStation 2 or the GameCube on store shelves, that's a thing of the distant past at this point. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.